bars, $25 million. That is how much Gucci Mane allegedly collected off one artist, while that artist was sitting in a federal prison cell not seeing a single dollar. And when Pooh Shiesty's mother reached out for help, needing anything, even just support, Gucci Mane ignored her like she was nobody. But here's where it gets real dark. When Pooh finally came home after 3 years behind bars, ready to reclaim his career and collect what was owed to him, he sat down and asked Gucci Mane directly, "Where is my money?" And Gucci Mane looked him in the face and said, "I'm broke right now, bro." The CEO of 1017 Records, the label that just spent 3 years collecting off one of the hottest artists in Memphis rap, broke. Now understand something, in the streets there is nothing, and I mean nothing, more disrespectful than playing with a man's money. That is the kind of thing people are willing to die over. And allegedly, Pooh Shiesty was done talking. On top of all of that, Pooh came home thinking his contract with 1017 Records was done. He had done the time, he had paid his dues, he assumed that was it. But here's the part nobody told him before he signed that deal. When you go to prison, your recording contract does not end, it pauses. The clock stops on your album rollout obligations, but the CEO, he keeps collecting every stream, every sync, every royalty check, and you see zero of it while you're locked up. Pooh Shiesty did 3 years in federal prison. Gucci Mane came home to check out. And when Pooh walked out and asked for his cut, he got excuses. So Pooh decided to handle it differently. He invited Gucci Mane to a meeting in Dallas, Texas. And what happened in that studio on January 10th, 2026 is now the most explosive story in hip-hop, and it is going to put Pooh Shiesty away for the rest of his life if the feds have their way. Stay right here, because what I'm about to break down for you is bigger than the robbery. This is about how the music industry turns artists into products, how a contract can legally rob you blind, and how Pooh Shiesty's story went from Memphis underdog to federal fugitive in the span of 5 years. Do not go anywhere. Pooh Shiesty was one of the most promising young rappers to come out of Memphis in a decade. In a city that gave hip-hop 3-6 Mafia, Yo Gotti, and Moneybagg Yo. That is not a small statement. He had the flow, the energy, the street credibility, and the commercial appeal. When Gucci Mane came knocking, it felt like a blessing, a legend reaching down to pull up the next generation. But the relationship between Pooh Shiesty and Gucci Mane did not stay a blessing for long. What people see on the surface, the collab records, the matching chain photos, the Instagram posts, none of that tells you what was really going on behind closed doors. The contracts, the money, the silence. To understand how things got to the point where Pooh Shiesty allegedly put an AK-style pistol in Gucci Mane's face and forced him to sign a release at gunpoint, we gotta go all the way back to where this relationship started. Because this story does not begin in a Dallas studio in 2026. It begins in Memphis in 2019. Let's rewind to 2019. Lontrell Williams Jr., known on the streets and in the booth as Pooh Shiesty, was a 20-year-old kid from Memphis, Tennessee, with no major label deal, no industry connections, and everything to prove. His father, Lontrell Williams Sr., known in Memphis as Mob Boss, had founded his own local label called Mob Ties Records. So Pooh was raised around music. The studio was not foreign to him. The grind was in his blood. He dropped his debut single Hell Night in 2019, linking up with his day one running partner BIG30. Then came Shiesty Summer, then Choppa Talk, then Day One. He was grinding hard, building a regional following the old-fashioned way, through consistency and raw talent. And people started paying attention. By early 2020, Pooh Shiesty had caught the attention of none other than Gucci Mane, the Atlanta trap legend, the founder of 1017 Records, and one of the most successful independent label bosses in hip-hop history. Now, Gucci Mane did not just offer a handshake, he extended a full joint venture deal. Pooh would sign to 1017 Records, which was distributed through Atlantic Records. That means Atlantic's infrastructure, Atlantic's marketing budget, Atlantic's global reach. For a kid from Memphis who had been going independent, this was the dream. Pooh said it himself in an interview. "I don't know who else I would go to. Ain't nobody was coming at me like WAP. It just made perfect sense." And on the surface, it did make sense. Gucci Mane had a track record. He had launched careers. Young Thug came through his circle. He had eyes for talent. So Pooh signed on the dotted line in April of 2020, and they celebrated by dropping a collaborative single together called Still Remember. On the record, Pooh literally rapped about the blessing of the deal, comparing himself and Gucci to Shaq and Kareem. He was happy, he was grateful, he was locked in. But here is what Pooh Shiesty did not fully understand on the day he signed that contract, and what most young artists never understand until it is too late. That deal was not just a record deal, it was a business arrangement structured to benefit 1017 Records and Atlantic first. When you sign to an imprint label like 1017, the label boss, in this case Gucci Mane, takes his cut before anything flows down to you. Recording costs, promotional costs, advances, all of it gets recouped from your royalties before you see a dollar. And the royalty split? In a typical imprint deal, the artist is often looking at 15 to 20% of the net, after the label takes its share, after Atlantic takes its distribution fee, after recoupment. The label boss is sitting at the top of that structure, collecting on everything. Let me break down exactly how a deal like this works, because most people have no idea how these numbers actually move. And this is the key to understanding why Pooh Shiesty felt robbed before he ever pulled out a weapon. When a label like 1017 signs an artist, they are not just buying your music, they are buying your masters, meaning they own the recordings. Not just the right to sell them, they own them. Masters, meaning they own the recordings, not just the right to sell them, they own them. You are essentially selling the product you make to them in exchange for a percentage of what that product earns. In a standard recording deal in 2020, a new artist with no leverage would be looking at a royalty rate somewhere between 15 and 18% of what is called the SRLP, the suggested retail list price of the music. But here is the catch. You do not see those royalties until the label has recouped every dollar they spent on you. The advance they gave you, recouped. The studio time, recouped. The music videos, recouped. The promotional campaigns, recouped. Every dollar the label spends comes out of your future royalty pool before you see a single check. Meanwhile, the label boss, Gucci Mane in this case, is operating on the publishing side and the master ownership side simultaneously. On the master ownership side, labels typically keep 82 to 85% of all recording revenue. So every stream of back-end blood that generated a dollar, Gucci Mane's 1017 Records was seeing 80+ cents of it. And there is something else people forget: touring. Before Pooh Shiesty went to prison, he was reportedly pulling in between $30,000 and $50,000 per performance. He was doing shows across the country at the peak of his momentum. A label with a 360 deal, which means the label takes a percentage of all revenue, including touring, merchandise, and endorsements, would be collecting off every show too. When you add it all up, streaming, album sales, touring, merchandise, sync licensing, radio royalties, the number that flows through a label off a commercially successful artist is staggering. And the artist, especially early in their career under a restrictive deal, sees a fraction of what the label collects. No cap. This is why so many rappers who go platinum end up broke. Pooh Shiesty did not have the leverage of a veteran. He was a new artist. He took what they offered him, because at that point in his career, the platform was worth more than the money. That decision would define the next 6 years of his life. Now let me break down the money, because this is the core of everything. Within months of signing, Pooh Shiesty dropped the record that changed everything. November 6, 2020, Back in Blood, featuring Lil Durk, hits the internet, and the streets went crazy immediately. The song debuted on the Billboard Hot 100 and climbed all the way to number 13. For reference, that is one of the highest charting debut singles from any Memphis rapper ever. It was certified 5 times platinum by the RIAA. 5 times platinum. Now let's talk about what 5 times platinum actually means in real dollars. A platinum certification means 1 million units, combining streams, digital downloads, and physical sales. On streaming platforms, artists typically earn somewhere between 3 and 5 thousandths of a dollar per stream. That sounds small, but when a song racks up hundreds of millions of streams, the money adds up fast. Back in Blood has accumulated over 600 million streams on Spotify alone, and that is not counting Apple Music, YouTube, Tidal, Amazon, and every other platform. Conservative estimates put the total streaming revenue from that one song in the range of $3 to $5 million. And that revenue does not stop. It keeps flowing in every single month, every single year, as long as people keep pressing play. And guess who sits at the top of that revenue chain? Gucci Mane's 1017 Records. But Back in Blood was just the beginning. In February of 2021, Pooh dropped his debut mixtape, Shiesty Season, 17 tracks. Features from Lil Durk, Gucci Mane, 21 Savage, BIG30, and more. The project debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with 62,000 album equivalent units in its first week. He became Billboard's Hip Hop Rookie of the Month. Additional records like Neighbors, Twerksome, Guard Up, and SUVs all added platinum and gold certifications. Multiple revenue streams flowing simultaneously. Streaming royalties, YouTube ad revenue, radio play, sync licensing deals, playlist placements. His name was everywhere. At the peak of his momentum, Pooh Shiesty's annual income from music was estimated at over $1 million a year. And remember, that is Pooh's share after recoupment. The label was taking its cut before any of that hit his pockets. According to people familiar with how 1017's deals work, an imprint deal structured the way Pooh's was would likely give Gucci Mane's label a 50 to 70% take of the master recording revenue before Pooh sees anything, and that is before Atlantic gets their distribution percentage. When you calculate the full picture of what 1017 was generating off Pooh Shiesty between 2020 and 2022, the streams, the tours, the merch, the features, the sync placements, we are talking about serious money flowing through that label. People close to the situation allege that number exceeded $25 million in total revenue off Pooh's catalog and likeness. $25 million. And here's where things started getting real grimy. In October of 2020, just months after his debut explosion, Pooh Shiesty got caught up in a shooting in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida. Armed robbery charges, aggravated assault, criminal theft, a whole case unfolding around him at the exact moment his career was taking off. Then in June of 2021, he was arrested again, this time connected to a strip club shooting in Miami, held without bond. By January 2022, Pooh Shiesty pleaded guilty to federal conspiracy charges. And in April of 2022, he was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months in federal prison. He was 22 years old. Now here is the part that grinds your soul when you think about it. The moment Pooh Shiesty walked into that federal facility, his clock as a working artist stopped. No tours, no appearances, no new music drops, no brand deals, no nothing. But his catalog, that never stopped working. Back in Blood kept streaming. Shiesty Season kept selling. Radio kept spinning his records. Playlists kept featuring him. YouTube kept running ads on his videos. And all of that revenue, every dollar that came in off the music that Pooh Shiesty created, kept flowing through 1017 Records, kept flowing to Gucci Mane for 3 years straight. Think about that for a second. 3 full years of streaming revenue, sync licensing, playlist royalties, YouTube monetization, all generating income off the name and voice of a man sitting in a federal cell with no access to any of it. The system kept spinning, the checks kept coming, and not a single dollar of that money allegedly made its way back to Pooh or his family while he was locked up. That is not a rumor. That is how the music business is structured. The masters keep generating money whether the artist is working or not, and the label, the entity that owns those masters, collects every penny while the artist is away. There is no pause button on royalties. There is no morality clause that says if the artist is incarcerated, the label stops collecting. The machine does not care. It just keeps running. And according to people close to the situation, Gucci Mane ran that machine for 3 years off Pooh Shiesty's back. And did not send a dollar home. Now this is where it gets personal. This is where it stops being just a business story and becomes something else entirely. While Pooh Shiesty was sitting inside a federal correctional facility, his family on the outside was still living life. His mother, Gladys Baines, known publicly as Mama Shiesty, was out here holding things together, raising grandkids, managing what was left of Pooh's affairs, keeping the family together while her son did his time. And according to people close to the family, Gladys Baines reached out to Gucci Mane for help. Now understand the context. This is not a stranger asking for a handout. This is the mother of the artist whose music was actively making Gucci Mane money in real time. While Back in Blood was racking up streams, while Shiesty Season was on playlists worldwide, while Gucci was cashing royalty checks, Pooh's mother was reaching out for support, and allegedly Gucci Mane ignored her. A post that circulated on social media, made by someone close to the family who tagged Mama Shiesty, made a claim that shook the internet, that Gucci Mane made over $25 million off Pooh Shiesty's music during his incarceration and did not split a single dollar with his family. Not one. $1. While Pooh sat in a cell, the money generated by his art, his voice, his creativity, allegedly went entirely into Gucci Mane's pocket. And when Pooh Shiesty was released from federal prison in October of 2025, having served 3 years after receiving credit for time served, he came home with one thing on his mind beyond music, the bag that was owed to him. Let's be clear about what he walked back into. His comeback single, FDO, First Day Out, dropped 2 months after his release and immediately shot to #1 on Billboard's Hot R&B and Hip Hop Songs chart and #1 on Hot Rap Songs. #1. The kid had not lost a step. The audience was still there. The money potential was undeniable, but he was still on a contract signed in 2020 before he had leverage, before he had a platinum album, before he had proven himself. He came home a confirmed hitmaker locked into a deal structured for a newcomer. Here is important context that makes this situation even more explosive. In the early days of 2026, word leaked that Yo Gotti and his collective music group had approached Pooh Shiesty about signing to CMG. Now understand what CMG represented at that moment. Gotti had built one of the hottest rosters in the game. ESTG, Glorilla becoming one of the biggest names in hip-hop, real infrastructure, real back-end splits. CMG was offering artists the kind of creative freedom and financial transparency that Pooh Shiesty was not getting at 1017. And Yo Gotti and Gucci Mane have had personal history going back years. Real bad blood between Atlanta and Memphis that predates Pooh Shiesty by a decade. So the idea of Pooh Shiesty jumping from 1017 to CMG was not just a business move, it was a statement. The money was there, the platform was there, the escape hatch was right in front of him, but he could not walk through it while he was still signed to Gucci Mane. That is the box he was in. A #1 song, a major label offer on the table, the whole rap world waiting to see what was next, and a contract from 2020 holding him in place like a chain. And when Pooh Shiesty looked at his situation, still signed to 1017, still locked into those original terms, with no clarity on what he was owed from 3 years of catalog revenue while he was incarcerated, he did what any man would do. He went and asked. According to accounts of what went down, Pooh Shiesty approached Gucci Mane and asked directly where his money was. He wanted to know what happened to the revenue his music generated while he was locked up. He wanted accountability. And allegedly, Gucci Mane's response was 3 words that set everything on fire. I'm broke right now, broke. The CEO of 1017 Records, the label that just spent 3 years collecting off one of the hottest artists in Memphis rap, broke. Now you have to understand what that means to someone who grew up the way Pooh Shiesty grew up. In the streets, there is a code. And the most fundamental part of that code is this. You do not play with a man's money. You do not collect off someone's labor and tell them you are broke when they come to collect. That is not just disrespectful. That is a declaration. People have been killed over less than that. And Pooh Shiesty was also sitting on another realization that was burning a hole in him. He had assumed, the way most people would assume, that after doing over 3 years in federal prison, his recording obligations would be done. That he would walk out a free man, musically. That the time served would count for something in the contract. That is not how it works. In the music industry, when an artist goes to prison, their contract does not terminate. It is suspended. The clock on their album delivery commitments pauses. But the label's right to collect revenue from existing masters, that never pauses. The label keeps collecting throughout the entire bid, and when the artist gets out, they are still under contract, with the same terms they signed at the beginning. So, Pooh Shiesty walked out of prison in October 2025, still legally bound to 1017 Records, still under Gucci Mane's authority as label boss, still subject to the same deal structure that gave Gucci the lion's share of everything his music generated. He was free from the feds, but not free from the contract. Every day that passed was money he could not make legitimately. Every day was an opportunity disappearing. And every time he looked at his situation and thought about those 3 years he spent in federal prison while his music kept generating revenue for someone else, that pressure built. And that is when he decided the conversation with Gucci Mane was over. January 10th, 2026, Dallas, Texas. Pooh Shiesty reached out to Gucci Mane and 2 other music industry professionals and told them to come to Dallas for a business meeting, a sit-down, a conversation about the terms of his recording contract with 1017. What those 3 men did not know was that they were not walking into a business meeting, that they were walking into an ambush. According to the federal criminal affidavit filed by FBI Special Agent Brittany Garcia, Pooh Shiesty had spent time preparing for this moment. He traveled from Memphis to Dallas. His father, Lontrell Williams Sr., rented vehicles for the crew. A 2020 Dodge Charger Hellcat registered in his name, plus 2 additional rental cars. Multiple men traveled from Memphis to Texas with one purpose. The three victims, Gucci Mane and two associates identified in the complaint as MM and BP, flew into Dallas believing they were there to talk business. They walked into a music studio inside an office building. The moment those studio doors closed behind them, everything changed. According to the DOJ complaint, Pooh Shiesty and 8 co-conspirators, including his father and BIG30, executed what prosecutors described as a coordinated armed takeover. Multiple individuals produced firearms. The door to the studio was immediately blocked. BIG30 physically placed his body against the exit to prevent anyone from leaving. The victims were trapped. Pooh Shiesty reached into his bag and pulled out a black AK-style pistol. He pointed it at Gucci Mane, the man who had signed him, who had given him his platform, who he had once compared to Shaq in his own lyrics, and demanded he sign paperwork releasing Pooh from his recording contract. Gucci Mane refused, so Pooh Shiesty held the gun on him until he changed his mind. According to the affidavit, Gucci Mane signed the contract release under gunpoint, and BIG30 stood there with his phone out, recording the entire thing on video. A man signing away a business contract at gunpoint on film while the studio doors blocked. But it did not stop there. After the paperwork was signed, the crew turned on the other two victims. Multiple firearms came out. One associate, referred to as MM, in the complaint, was physically choked to the point of near unconsciousness. And then the robbery happened in full. Rolex watches, jewelry including Gucci Mane's own wedding ring and earrings, cash, a Louis Vuitton bag, a wallet fitted with an Apple AirTag. Everything of value in that room was taken. The victims were trapped inside that studio while the crew walked out. They made their way out in vehicles that surveillance cameras from a neighboring building had already captured on film. And then, and this is where the story gets unbelievably reckless, some members of the crew went on social media and posted the stolen items. They posted the Rolex watches, they posted the jewelry on their own accounts. After a federal kidnapping and armed robbery, the moment word spread on social media that Gucci Mane had been robbed and kidnapped by his own artist, the entire rap internet exploded. Some people sided with Pooh, arguing that if the money allegations were true, Gucci brought it on himself. Others called the move reckless and stupid, pointing out that you cannot run a legitimate comeback and pull a move like that at the same time. But the thing that really got people talking was the cooperation, the fact that Gucci Mane gave information to federal investigators. In the world Pooh Shiesty came from, going to the police after getting robbed, even if you are the victim, carries a stigma that no amount of legal justification erases on the streets. 50 Cent immediately hopped online to fire shots at Gucci's credibility. Old videos of Gucci Mane saying "don't tell the police" resurfaced and went viral overnight. The court of public opinion was divided. The court of law was not. Visual, FBI badge, ankle monitor graphics, social media post screenshots, DOJ seal. The FBI was already involved before the arrests were made public, and when you look at the evidence prosecutors compiled against Pooh Shiesty and his crew, the case is airtight in ways that are almost hard to believe. First, the ankle monitor. Pooh Shiesty was on federal home confinement at the time of the Dallas robbery. He had come home from prison in October 2025, but he was not fully free. He was on supervised release with an ankle monitor. That ankle monitor placed him at the scene of the crime. GPS data from the federal monitoring system tracked his location to that Dallas studio on January 10th. The government's own supervision technology put him in the room. Second, the surveillance footage. Cameras from a neighboring building captured the vehicles the crew used.
Right.
2 of those cars were rental vehicles rented in the name of Lontrell Williams Sr., Pooh's father. The Dodge Charger Hellcat was registered to Pooh's father. The vehicle trail from Memphis to Dallas is documented. Third, the social media posts. Members of the group photographed the stolen goods and posted them online. Investigators matched those items to what the victims reported stolen, and those accounts were linked directly back to the defendants. Fourth, the video BIG30 recorded. A video of Gucci Mane signing the contract release under gunpoint, on camera. Documented evidence of the crime in progress, allegedly created by one of the defendants themselves. Now let's talk about what they are actually facing in court, because the charges here are not something you negotiate your way out of with a good lawyer and a clean record. The federal complaint was filed Monday, March 30th, 2026. By Wednesday, April 1st, the FBI had executed raids simultaneously across Dallas and Memphis. The FBI's Memphis field office hit a home in Cordova, Tennessee. A property records search confirmed it was owned by Pooh Shiesty. Multiple arrests went down in a single day across multiple cities. Those charged include Pooh Shiesty, Lontrell Williams Jr., as the ringleader, his father Lontrell Williams Sr., BIG30, Rodney Wright Jr., plus 6 additional co-conspirators: Kadarius Waters, Demarion Gibson, DeMarcus Glover, Corday Johnson, Darian McDaniel, and Terrence Rogers. 9 defendants total. All 9 face federal kidnapping charges. And this is critical. Federal kidnapping is not—
I'm sorry, were those pictures right, or was that AI? It was a... Is that racist of me to say that I don't believe it was a white man involved in them? Like, dang. Let me know what y'all think. If there's any body on the other spectrum here, you know what I'm saying? That's not this side, that's this side. Let me know what y'all feel about that. Am I wrong because I low-key don't think that y'all was involved in this? I don't think that this video is right. Huh.
not a state charge. It is not a robbery charge that gets plea deal down to a few years. Federal kidnapping carries a maximum penalty of life in prison. No parole in the federal system. If convicted, Pooh Shiesty, who is 26 years old, could spend every remaining year of his life inside a federal penitentiary. His father is facing the same charges. BIG30, his closest collaborator, his day one, the man he made music with since they were teenagers, is facing the same charges. This one move took out an entire circle. U.S. Attorney Ryan Raybould addressed the media directly. For anyone contemplating using violence and intimidation as a business practice, I'm here to tell you that it will be vigorously investigated and prosecuted. And the lawyer for BIG30, Arthur Horn, told media his client had no prior criminal history, that he and Pooh had come up together in the music game, that people should wait for all the facts before passing judgment. But the facts already public are damaging. They paint a picture of a man who felt cornered, trapped by a contract, broke after 3 years in prison watching someone else profit off his art, and who made the worst possible decision when he finally snapped. This situation is bigger than Pooh Shiesty and Gucci Mane. This is a story the entire music industry needs to sit with, because what allegedly happened here is not unique. The details are extreme. Nobody else has allegedly pulled out an AK to get out of a record deal. But the underlying grievance? The feeling of being trapped, of watching someone else collect off your work while you sit in a box, of coming home with nothing after giving everything, that is not rare in this industry. That is a pattern. Rick Ross addressed the situation the day after the arrest dropped and said something that actually made sense. He told his followers that if you signed a deal for $100,000 and now there's $10 million on the table, you renegotiate. You have to do it through legitimate channels. You cannot bring the streets into the boardroom. He is right about the method, but he also acknowledged what everybody already knows, that the underlying tension Pooh Shiesty felt about money and contracts is a conversation the industry has been avoiding for decades, because here is the reality of what a standard imprint deal does to a young artist from the hood. You come in with no lawyer who really understands music law, you get an advance, maybe a few $100,000, and you think you are rich. But that advance is recoupable. Every dollar they spend marketing you, recording you, promoting you, comes out of your royalties before you see a penny. And meanwhile, the label is collecting master recording revenue that the artist sees very little of. Pooh Shiesty created a 5-times platinum hit. He created a top 5 debut mixtape. He generated hundreds of millions of streams. And he came home from prison with an estimated net worth of $3 to $4 million, while his label allegedly pulled $25 million in revenue off his catalog. That is the real score that got kept. That is the math that broke him. And here is where things stand today. Pooh Shiesty is in federal custody. His father is in federal custody. BIG30 is in federal custody. The man who once rapped that Gucci came and got him is now staring at a potential life sentence for how he tried to get himself out. His comeback single FDO had just hit #1. The bag from Yo Gotti and CMG was reportedly on the table. Everything Pooh needed was right there. A legitimate lane out of a situation he felt was suffocating him. And he threw all of it away. That is the real tragedy in all of this. Not just the legal exposure, not just the potential decades behind bars, but the fact that the music was working, the audience was there, the money was coming back around legitimately. His lawyer had said publicly after his prison release, he will be bigger than ever. The streets do not care about your streaming numbers when you feel disrespected, when you feel like someone took from you and looked you in the eyes and lied about it, when your mother was calling and getting ignored. All the logic in the world does not compete with that kind of pain. Pooh Shiesty thought the meeting in Dallas was going to solve something, but the only thing that happened in that studio on January 10th, 2026 was that a 26-year-old man from Memphis
was an illegal violent crime.
Made a decision that the system will never let him walk back. $25 million in alleged revenue, one meeting gone sideways, and a life sentence sitting at the end of the road. That is the real story of Pooh Shiesty and Gucci Mane. And if you are watching this and you are an up-and-coming artist, please, before you sign anything, get a lawyer who actually knows this industry. Understand every clause in your contract. Know what happens to your royalties when you cannot work. Know what your label is collecting while you are not in the room. Because the music industry will...
That's the one right there. I already know you about to say this industry will play you like a bag of doo-doo. Like you look like an idiot. You're gonna be feeling like, huh? And that's just the real world, my boy. The real world's gonna play you. It's gonna smack you up a little bit. It's gonna tell you you got taxes. There's laws. You gotta follow the rules. Just a little bit. You gotta know the rules to even follow them. Where do you find that out? When do you find out? You gotta find out what the rules were before you even started to play the game. That's tough. A lot of people don't even know the rules to even try to, get ahead in any way, shape, or form. Read the book. Read a book. It's like, nah.
Smile in your face, put you on magazine covers, call you family, and collect every dollar you generate without losing a night of sleep. Pooh Shiesty learned that the hard way. Make sure you do not. Think about the math one more time from a different angle. Pooh Shiesty came home in October 2025. He drops FDO and immediately hits #1. The demand was clearly still there. The audience had waited 3 years and showed back up in full force overnight. That tells you the catalog value never went away. Every stream, every playlist ad, every time a DJ played Back in Blood at a club while Pooh was in prison. That was money. Real money. Consistent money. Money that flowed upward through the label structure and never made a U-turn back to the artist who created it. If you made it this far, you already know what time it is. Drop a comment below. Do you think Gucci Mane was wrong for how he handled this? Or did Pooh Shiesty make his own bed? Let us know what you think. And if you are new here, make sure you subscribe because we are just getting started.
Alright, chat. Y'all know. Y'all know I'm
Chill. Chill.
It make a nigga heart hurt, boy. It don't make these niggas happy. These niggas ain't happy on home. Step to me, fuck niggas. I would love to, nigga. Okay, you see my wife, you can talk to me. I'ma smoke you. This is what happens when a hip-hop legend becomes the one thing the culture can never forgive. On April 2nd, 2026, the Department of Justice unsealed a 31-page federal complaint that changed everything. Inside that document, 3 letters appeared over and over again. R.D. Radrick Delantic Davis, Gucci Mane, and according to that paperwork, he identified Pooh Shiesty and BIG30 to federal investigators by name, by stage name, and by Instagram handle. But here's where it gets crazy. Within 48 hours, 50 Cent was posting memes. Rick Ross was weighing in from Prague. Asian Doll was going off. Atlanta inmates were literally ripping Gucci Mane posters off prison walls. And the internet had already delivered its verdict. Gucci Mane is a rat. Now let me be clear with y'all. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what happened inside that Dallas recording studio. Why Pooh Shiesty allegedly pulled an AK on his own label boss. What the paperwork actually says versus what people think it says. And why this might be the end of everything Gucci Mane built over 2 decades. This isn't just about one incident. This is about loyalty, money, contracts, and what happens when the trap god becomes the trap. Let's break it down. To understand why this situation is so devastating, you gotta understand how deep this connection actually ran. Pooh Shiesty, real name Lontrell Donnell Williams Jr., was born November 8, 1999 in Memphis, Tennessee. Grew up in the Cane Creek Apartments on the South Side. His father, Lontrell Williams Sr., was a rapper himself who went by Mob Boss and ran Mob Ties Records. Hip-hop was in his blood from day one. In April 2020, Gucci Mane signed Pooh Shiesty to 1017 Records through a joint venture with Atlantic. Their first collaboration, Still Remember, dropped June 19, 2020. And then, on November 6, 2020, everything exploded. Back in Blood, featuring Lil Durk, peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100. That track is now certified 8 times platinum with over 400 million YouTube views. Think about that for a second. Gucci Mane found this kid from Memphis, put him on his label, and within a year, he had the biggest song in the country. Shiesty's debut mixtape, Shiesty Season, dropped February 5th, 2021, and hit number 3 on the Billboard 200 with 62,000 first-week sales. He made the 2021 XXL freshman class, got nominated for a BET award. At 21 years old, Pooh Shiesty was 1017's biggest success story in a decade. Now here's what most people don't know. While all this success was happening, Shiesty was already facing serious federal charges from an October 2020 shooting in Florida. On January 4th, 2022, he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to possess firearms in furtherance of crimes of violence. On April 20th, 2022, a federal judge sentenced him to 63 months. That's 5 years and 3 months in federal prison. He went in. Gucci kept him on the roster. In October 2024, when Gucci dropped almost every artist from 1017, he specifically kept 2 names, Pooh Shiesty and Fujiano. He stood by his guy. Then on October 6th, 2025, Pooh Shiesty walked out of federal prison 6 months early for good behavior. He was on home confinement with an ankle monitor. And on December 12th, 2025, he dropped FDO, First Day Out.
going on?